Welcome to the debut episode of Unsolved and Unseen, the podcast where we delve into chilling mysteries, true crime, and the unexplained events that keep us up at night. I'm Octavio, and joining me as always is my co-host Chris.
How's it going? I'm Chris. We got a pretty cool episode today, I think. Something that has really been, I won't say overdone, but the Dyatlov Pass incident that happened, very mysterious. It kind of spawned a lot of different theories about what happened. And it wasn't actually, nothing was actually consensus until very recently. This happened a long time ago. So, yeah, should be fun.
Yeah, no, I mean that's right, Chris. Like the reality is, me and you talked about it, right? What should be our first episode, and you keep hearing, right, that there's debates among researchers, conspiracy theories, and survivalists alike, right? And kind of we'll touch up on each one of those theories as we kind of go on through the segment. But the reality is, one thing we can agree, these hikers in Russia, it was a tragic and inexplicable end with a series of eerie details that have sparked countless theories, and that's why I think it continues to attract attention. You know, 60 plus years later, right?
Yeah,
So
and even though again there's an official consensus, there's still a lot of people that they don't necessarily like it. I don't know, maybe it's more fun to continue to think about conspiracy theories, or maybe there's something there. I don't know, it's up to you to decide, really.
yeah, no, agree. That said, I think it's time to set the stage, right? So here's the scene, right? It's February 1959 in the remote Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union, in an area the local Mansi people, honestly called the Mountain of the Dead. So a group of 9 experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, led by Igor, Dyatlov, set out on a trek through the Russian
Dyatlov,
terrain.
have to say
Yeah,
it with a Russian accent.
yeah, sorry, like probably trying to kick in with the Hispanic accent too. It's not working. So they tripped through this rugged terrain. And as you're gonna cover, they were aiming to reach a Torton, a peak about 6 miles north of their campsite. But as we all just discussed, none of them make it back alive. Now, Chris, I know you're gonna cover a really cool visual, but I gotta tell you, man, like one of the things that stuck out to me, and it's like these are advanced hikers, right? And they may be young, and they're like, most of them are in their like 20s. But the reality is, like you and I, having served in the military, I got to tell you, man, I'm sure you've experienced it. I know I've experienced it. But when you go with advanced hikers, you got to tell you, they go toe to toe with those people who've ever done land navigation or advanced land nav, even SEER school, right? Survival, evacuation, resistant escape training. Now, again, most of that is really the survive and evade piece, but the reality is that search and rescue operations, I mean, just recently, I think I was telling you this, man, before we got on, I was in Western North Carolina for Hurricane Helene, and I'll tell you, the only people that can go toe to toe with all the military group members that were out there doing search and rescue operations were these advanced hikers. If they weren't advanced hikers, man, like we kind of put them in their own little party closer to the safe zones, or really the where we're setting up base of operations, right? They weren't going out with us. So I got to tell you,
Yeah.
really have that in mind as we kind of go through that, and you give us that visual.
Yeah, that's an important discussion point, because it kind of lends to and takes away from some of the conspiracy theories that we're going to talk about. A lot of experts that were doing investigations on this are kind of like, yeah, no, it's experienced guys wouldn't do this, or like, yeah, an experienced person would do this, or again, it kind of was a part of the investigation. Even though Igor was 23, right, and all of his buddies were like roughly the same age, with the exception of one guy who was actually a very experienced. In fact, I'm not sure why he wasn't the leader of the group. It seems like he would be. But either way, they're all like college students from this Polytechnic Institute that's pretty close by. In the Soviet Union, they have different certification levels, 1, 2, and 3, right? And it's like snow trekking or whatever. I don't know. I guess it's pretty important in Russia. If you live in Russia, snow trekking is going to be the thing that you want to do. Not badminton or table tennis or anything.
Yeah.
It's definitely snow trekking. It's how you stay alive. But anyways, so all these people, all these 9 folks were, well, all 10 of them. That one of them dropped out a little bit later. Thank God. He died at 73, by the way. So they're all level 2 certified, and in order to get to level 3, you have to do some crazy trek, like
Yeah.
the trek that these 9 folks were doing. You have to do a crazy trek. It's like over or pretty close to 200 miles, right, in the wilderness,
Yeah.
unsupported.
Yeah.
And at the end of this particular trek, right, Igor Dyatlov and his friends and the people that came on the trip with him are supposed to, put in for their level 3 certification.
And he's supposed to
and
be that leader, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So this was kind of their harbinger event or crucible event, so they can now be actual experts in the field of snow trekking. Or that's not the exact term, snow trekking, but that's what they were doing. But so they're very experienced.
Yeah. So can you kind of show that journey? I know you were telling me there was like a really good website, which please give the shout out, because I think that that person did a phenomenal job.
Yep, for sure. So if you guys are following along visually, I'm going to share a map. So dyatlovpass.com. By the way, guys, if anybody wants any extra information, dyatlovpass.com is the repository on the internet. I mean, they have an insane amount of stuff. So you can go through just about every detail. I don't know where they got all their information. I guess it's all open source. I guess it's a pretty high profile case, so it would be. But anyways, this is sort of this is just a Google Maps, right? So whoever this person was at dyatlovpass.com, they took the time out of their own busy schedules to create this from a Google Maps. But anyways, if you guys can see, this is about as close to the middle of nowhere as you can possibly get, right? Not saying that Russia's nowhere, but the specific location that they were trying to trek is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's the wilderness. Like I said, I couldn't find exactly how far. I don't know, Octavio, if you saw anything about the total distance of the intended journey. It looks to be about, I don't know, around 100 miles roughly, but I'm not super sure.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, one thing it is, like, it's extremely detailed.
This is like roughly their starting point, right? Vishay. So they do their travel to Vishay from whatever college they're coming from. And you can see it's mostly like a northern to northwestern trek to get to this last star on top here, which is Torten 1182, delineated by these 2 giant rock stacks. So that's fun. So I guess when you get there. They never got there.
Yeah.
As we know, their deviation point happened pretty close to here, right? So you can see in purple their intended route, and this is right at the mouth of the Dyatlov Pass, or whatever pass that they're going through. I think they renamed it Dyatlov Pass a little bit later, obviously in honor of these people. But their initial route was almost straight north. Due to weather conditions, blizzard, I mean, I can imagine, winds through a pass like this, I don't even 50, probably hurricane type winds, especially in the midst of a blizzard. But
I think that's key there, right, Chris? Like we mentioned, like, one of the things they talked about, it was immediately a strange choice, right? That deviation, because, and I had to look this up because, people kept saying it over and over. I even reached out to a couple buddies who are advanced hikers, and I was like, yeah, man, like, people know a leeward slope is not, like, if you're trying to train for that, got it, or you're trying to, really try to pitch a tent on a slope, I got it. That's definitely a thing, that, like, advanced hikers attempt to do. But, again, and just for those who aren't tracking, because I know I didn't, it's the side of a mountain or other terrain that kind of faces away from the wind or is downward. Again, that's most people who kind of look at this story. It's like, okay, why didn't they backtrack a little bit for a safer spot? Right? If in the event there was some serious weather conditions and stuff, I got it. Maybe it was a check the box complete, that they were on the side of a slope. They wanted to, avoid the elements. Time would tell, maybe that's not something they actually thought, at the time, get back to a safer spot.
Yeah, that was a note that came out of some of the investigations that I read. Some of the investigators and some experts that were consulted for this particular investigation, I'll note both in the 50s or 60s or what was the date?
It was February, like February 1959, right? And it's funny.
59.
And we were talking about this, right? This is pre all the technology, but But, again, another thing that every hiker said, right? It was like, hey, man, just like in the military, I'm sure you guys have a packing list of everything you're going to take out there. And the website covers it, right? Every single detail that, each hiker had, what they had on them. But they've also relayed back, and like you said, authorities were confused because, hey, here's our full itinerary. Here's what we're going to get after. Here's no crap when we're going to make dinner. What we're even going to do for the next day, et cetera, et cetera. So like it was kind of conflicting immediately when they saw, okay, wait a minute. They were supposed to make contact with the club around February 12th, but no word came, right? So people like
Right.
started to feel concerned, like, okay, hang on, dude, it's February 20th. This is way past that timeline. I know you guys said, if you really enjoyed the weather, and y'all wanted to, kick into high gear and, really loved what y'all were doing out there, y'all would stay a little bit longer, but it's starting to get a little bit, worrisome, right? So
Yeah.
unfortunately, they did a search, right? February
Yeah. So,
26th, days later.
so
Yeah.
that is a kind of important. So this incident happened in the evening between the February 1st and February 2nd. They
Yeah.
weren't supposed to be finished with their trek until the 12th. And
Right.
that's when Igor Dyatlov was supposed to send a telegram back to
Their club, right?
their
Yeah.
club, right, saying like, hey, we made it, right? And then it wasn't until the 26th that they actually started their search and rescue efforts. But
Yeah.
I want to move back just a little bit, backtrack to the point where they deviated from their track, right? So they deviated from their northward track, they deviated west, right? And then they finally realized, right, they've gone like a kilometer and a half off course. Dyatlov kind of made an executive decision, maybe not the right one, probably actually definitely not the right one. Made the executive decision to set up camp. And you're right, Octavio, on the slope, the side of a slope of a
Mhm.
mountain. Um,
Yeah.
and that's generally speaking, right? Avalanches are the most dangerous part uh, of like any Arctic trek or journey or
Yeah.
snow anything, right? I mean, hell, even in snowboarding and skiing, it's still a threat. Um, but I think what he wanted to do, and this is just kind of a little bit speculation, kind of going back and reading through
Mhm.
some of their diaries, and everything had been pretty hunky dory up until this point, right? They're a couple days into their journey. As you can see, I mean, they almost made it. Like if you look at the actual map itself, like they almost made it, right? They've been walking for a couple days, maybe like a week or so. Everything had been fine, right? They've been having fun. Again, you read through their diaries, and um, everything was pretty fun and everything was going according to plan until this particular night, right? Okay, the first obstacle that they really come across, maybe Dyatlov was getting a little bit big for his britches, because you're
Yeah.
right, there were a
Yeah.
few places around the area where they made camp that would have been way better and way safer. Specifically, this wood line here, right? I don't know if you guys can see, but not even, heck, not even 500 meters away from where they set up camp, there was a wood line. And that's like pretty common knowledge for anybody that's traveling in, Arctic or snow conditions, is that if there's trees around you, the likelihood of
Yeah.
you getting killed by an avalanche is way lower.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay,
but
well,
regardless,
that's key
mhm,
though. So Chris, I got to cover that piece, man. I think you nailed something that we were talking about too. To people who are not familiar with the Dyatlov Pass, again, some of my hiker buddies, I just objectively, right? Hey, you tracking this? Good, because I wanted them to come in blind, right? It's like, hey, here's the scenario, here's what's going on, here's time and space, what's available to them. And the immediate reaction was like, why didn't they hug the wood line? It was
yeah,
like, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? And again, I'm a lot of people, right? Want to play Monday morning quarterback, the what if scenario. But to your point, Chris, right? Time and time again, it's like you guys are advanced hikers. There's a lot of things that we're seldomly miss that most people would easily know to do. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and then I think the wood line may have been something that went through their minds
Yeah.
a little later on, because again, if you're looking at the map, you can kind of see where the bodies were found
Yeah.
in the wood line, um, and pretty far away from where they actually made camp. So I don't know. Maybe that's an indicator that they didn't set up in the best spot. Regardless, the morning of the 12th comes, right? No telegram. Um, and then Octavio, you want to take it away from there?
Yeah, it
Um,
was interesting. Yeah, I mean,
mhm,
like I mentioned earlier, right? The reality is 12th had gone by. They're starting to get extremely concerned. All right, now it's the 20th. start coming up with a plan, start figuring out what they should do next. Unfortunately, again, they didn't start till the 26th. So that's 8 days in between there. But who knows, as you said, right? As the ME would come back on these classified documents. I mean, you're talking about weeks out there by the time they actually went out there and did a search and rescue. So it was completely too late. Because what they find, as soon as searchers arrived, they found the tent ripped open from the inside and abandoned. The hikers' belongings still inside, which immediately sign number one. Okay, what's going on, right? And as you pointed out here on the map, their bodies, are scattered across the snow. Some are wearing little more than their undergarments, right? I mean, like literally, dude, just basic underwear, basic everything, which
Yeah.
I know gets pretty descriptive on this website. So
one of the things one of the things they found, looking at the campsite,
yeah,
again, you said cut open from the inside, but there's 9 sets of tracks.
yes, yeah,
Most of them were in socks. Some of them were no socks or just bare feet, and so I think 1 or 2 people had like 1 shoe on.
Yeah.
So that's pretty weird. That's like your first red flag right there, that either they left in a damn hurry or something really fishy and weird is going on.
Yeah, only thing that's getting me out with that kind of weather conditions, and I've definitely been in them. Whether it's Eastern Europe, Germany, or Fort Dix, New Jersey, some kind of animal has to be coming at me, or we're under attack. I mean, that's just the reality, man. Nothing's getting me to move that quick.
You're gonna die in the next 30 seconds.
Exactly.
Up and running.
Yeah. Now that's funny though. I did want you to kind of mention this because I know you texted me and I'm telling you, I couldn't stop reading this website. I was looking up paradoxical undressing. Like, can you kind of elaborate on that? That's something that I was like, man, dude, I was like, are you describing me at Fort Dix?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It might not have been too paradoxical when you were undressing at Fort Dix, Octavio. I remember you. I remember you in the Army.
Yeah, it had been Army time. Just regular Army. This is me just being an Army guy.
Regular undressing. How much room is there under a whoopee? There's room for one more. Take those pants off.
Yeah, I just need some pine straw. Let's go, boys.
So paradoxical undressing is a really interesting phenomenon that happens in the late stages of hypothermia. Not too much studies have been done about it until kind of recently. And in fact, I think the Dyatlov Pass incident probably kind of spurred a little bit of that studies. But yeah, paradoxical undressing, it's kind of self-explanatory, but somebody's in the late stages of hypothermia, and for whatever reason, and I'll get into that, there is a scientific reason. They kind of just found out within the last 10 years that for whatever reason, they think that they're actually really hot when they're not. They're very dangerously and fatally hypothermic. You feel hot, you start undressing, and 9 out of 10 times once you get to that area, unless there's other people around or you're in like a supported area, you're gonna die. You're gonna die. It's just, you take off your clothes in negative 30 degree, and that's pretty important too. They're in like negative 30 degree Fahrenheit temperatures in the Dyatlov Pass. Again, this is in the winter time. They specifically chose one of the toughest times to try to cross this terrain. And again, it's because I think they're young college students, but they're also going for that level 3 certification. So super cold. So paradoxical undressing. But some researchers in Germany actually looked at it. They did a study. Maybe they went through some metadata, but basically what happens when you're hypothermic, your body's blood vessels, arteries, veins, all that stuff, it constricts to your extremities so that you're retaining more blood and more heat and the core. So essentially your core is staying warm, your heart and your brain is staying warm. Well, if you're hypothermic for long enough, then the muscles that keep those arteries and veins and blood vessels, capillaries, all that stuff constricted, they tire out. You can't do it forever. You can't just be hypothermic forever. Being hypothermic, contrary to popular belief, is not very healthy for you, Octavio. But so those blood vessels start to tire out, and they'll eventually relax again, right? All that blood, all that warm blood is going to rush into your extremities, rush into your hands, rush into your feet, rush into your face, right? The surface of your skin and everything. And that can trick somebody into thinking that, hey, I'm actually really warm. But no, you're not. Your core is just your core temperature is dropping, and the temperature of your extremities is rising. So,
Insane.
anyways, that's the theory for paradoxical undressing. It can make people feel very hot and trick them into undressing. And then another interesting fact, actually, I read this article. Another interesting fact is that happens typically right before what's called terminal burrowing, right?
Yeah.
And terminal burrowing is actually an involuntary response to dying of hypothermia. And what happens is you get this paradoxical undressing thing like 9 times out of 10 before you die. And what you'll do is it's basically your lizard brain turns on, right? And you no longer have like critical thinking, thought control, anything. You're on autopilot, and you're trying to like hibernate or burrow under anything that you can find. So they found hypothermia victims dead in bushes. They found hypothermia victims under vehicles, under cars. So you literally, I guess it's so weird. Your lizard brain turns on. You get on all fours normally, or you start crawling, or like army crawling. And you just try to get under something. So a lot of times when you find hypothermia victims, i.e. the Dyatlov Pass victims, they'll have a lot of like abrasions and scrapes and stuff on their hands, on their arms, on their torso, right? Because they're like dragging themselves along, and again, you're like a robot at this point, which is so crazy to think about. So
that's a perfect segue, man. Because I remember you telling me like, before you talk about the hikers, I gotta cover that, and that makes sense, man. Because the reality is, like, I think they mentioned, right, like 2 of the hikers, like Yuri, both of them were named Yuri. The weird thing is, like, immediately they're like, wait a minute, are these like burns on their hands or something? And then they, they were hugged up against a tree, so they're like, oh, okay, maybe they climbed the tree in desperation, and that probably kind of goes to what you're saying. It's like, I don't know if they were burning, I don't know if they were trying to figure out like ways to just like survive, or and it's just, again, it's not them, it's just like animal instinct, or lizard instinct, as you covered it, is kicking in. And then they showed, what was it, like months later, which, by the way, mind you, it really was like May of that year, they find the 4 others in a ravine. And those who are not familiar, it's a narrow gorge with like steep sides on both sides, right? And they, same thing, right? They had all these like brutal injuries, they crushed skulls, missing tongue. Dude, I don't know, man. That's one of the ones that I almost didn't want to cover, because it's like, dude, that's an anomaly in its own. And facial damage. But one thing that the ME, like, again,
you said facial damage. One guy was missing his eyes. His eyes were gone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what has like went into this, and the mystique of this whole thing is that tongue missing, eyes missing. This dude that had his eyes missing also had his eyebrows missing. His eyebrows were gone. There's 2 other folks that were found under a pine tree, right? They had burns on their hands. There were broken limbs above them,
unexplainable,
like as if they tried to climb up. And I don't know. Again, there's different theories. Maybe they were trying to find their camp. They got lost. They're trying to find other people. But they found burns on their hands. Again, you said they had the cause of death for 2 of them. The 2 that were found in the creek was blunt force trauma to the chest, which is not super strange. But the strange part is that they didn't have any outward signs of blunt force trauma to the chest, even though that's how they died. So there's a lot of questions here, and that kind of flows into the different theories that sort of arise out of what happened.
Oh. No, completely. I mean, the injuries, right? I mean, you talked about it, right? I know that's something you wanted to cover, because it's like, the animal attack. And again, it's like, things just keep piling, man. And it's again, not to, I don't want to make light of the situation, right? These are, definitely people we're talking about, young, hikers, that, lost their lives. But, it's just like, you can't continue. Like, my nervous tick is just to be super uncomfortable about everything you hear, and that keeps piling on all the things that from external trauma to the injuries to the unknowns about their equipment, their gear. Dude, you start looking at this full breakdown in the details, and you're like, dude, what in the heck is just happened here? Which, by the way, I think you talk about it, right? It's in here that they talk about a lot of their injuries. You can actually see what actually happened, or I guess what the ME put, in terms of injuries, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I mean, again, it's a great website. But yeah, so the initial investigation discovered initially within the first week or two, they found 5 of the 9,
Mm.
right? And really, there weren't that many close together. So in between the campsite and the creek, right? And the creek is 2 months later where they found the remaining 4.
Yeah.
In between the campsite and the creek, which is around 500 meters, 500, 750 meters, they found Zinaida, Rustam Slobodin, which we got to circle back to Rustam Slobodin, by the way, and then Igor Dyatlov, the leader of the group. But they were spaced out too much, like a little bit too much. There was 50 to 100 meters in between each one of these people, and again, all 9 of them were found in various stages of clothing. So some of them had, your full battle rattle. For winter time, and some of them had a tank top, a sock, maybe a shoe, and then like a pair of sweats. So a lot of them, I mean, obviously a lot of them died of hypothermia, but the cause of death for several others, and I'll go through that list in just a little bit. The cause of death for several others were blunt force trauma. But yeah, Octavio, let's circle back to Rustam. What was weird about Rustam Slobodin?
Yeah, so I think he like joined the group pretty late into the game or something like that. I think he was originally set out to go out to another one, but anyways, like him and along with others, they found rather weird, right? When you look at his layout, it was completely like over prepared. I don't know. Another theory there is that dude was tied with military government, and just wanted to join in on this group to kind of see what they were doing. Again, one of the many theories that was out there.
Yeah. Yep. So again, back in the Soviet Union days, people think that he may have been KGB, and that might have had something to do with it, because they were all found with irradiated clothing.
Oh yeah,
that's really important.
That's right.
That goes to a couple of the theories too. Well, really just one. That it was radiation fallout. But yeah, so their clothes were irradiated, but the bodies and the tissues themselves were not. So it's weird. If there's some radiation fallout, everything would be irradiated, but no, it's only the clothing. So that was kind of interesting. Honestly, that kind of rules out radiation fallout, because that was one of the theories that arose. Were like, oh, radiation, of course,
because of the missile site nearby, right? It was a known Soviet missile site nearby that, where they were experimenting specifically on missiles that had, very specific type of radiation, or as anybody knows, right? Any type, very very specific type of missiles always, exuberate some kind of radiation, right? So yeah, completely something to think about, right? Yeah.
Yep. And there's Rustam Slobodin, this shady. I don't know Rustam. He might have been a nice guy, but this shady guy that was really overprepared, that joined their group last minute, and they're irradiated. And the Soviet Union really likes nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
In a Cold War.
That era. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just kind of strange. But yeah, so. About another 50 meters away from the campsite, from Igor Dyatlov, who was the last one that they found, was the 4 folks, and they were actually in a creek, right, or very very near to a creek, with running water under, I think, like 4 feet or 4 meters of snow or something like that. That's why it took them a couple of months to uncover their bodies. And these are the ones where they found the missing eyes, the missing eyebrows, the missing tongue, right, and the weird causes of death, right? So impact to the chest, impact to the skull. So that's where they were at the creek. And then a little bit further away was the dead pine tree, right? And that's where there was 2 Yuri. Actually, there was 3 Yuris on this trip. Yuri, I'm not even going to attempt their last names, but anyways, there was 3 of them. 2 of them were found under this dead pine tree, with the remnants of a fire. So it looks like they may have tried to start a fire, and they were found with burns on their hands. So that that would explain why they're a little bit burnt. And one person had a burn on his head, I think. In fact, let me switch over to see some of the different, because this is really interesting too. Again, the amount of work that went into this website is just insane.
Yeah, bravo to her. I think like shout out, right? It's
Oh, big
God, I
time.
think yeah, complete shout out to this who's ever maintaining this, right? Because I know they even keeping it up to date with the latest theories with Russian authorities and actual scientific evidence. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, you can see it. You can either go and read through this website and get a really good understanding of it, or you can listen to us and get like a 5% understanding of what
Yeah.
happened, right? So the author of this particular page is Alessa
Oh,
Nova.
Chavanova.
Yeah, we got to practice
Mm.
our Russian. Anyways, Yuri Doroshenko. So this is one of the guys that that was found by the remnants of the fire in the pine tree. Again, I mean, look at the clothes. So this is what he was found in, right? He's got a short sleeve button up,
Yeah.
a tank top, a pair of like running shorts, ranger panties, and then some like a pair of sweatpants. Like they look
Yeah.
like regular sweatpants too. It's not like snow pants or anything. They're sweatpants, and then some socks. Right?
Yeah.
That's nothing. I mean, we're talking
That's
negative
insane.
30 degrees.
That's
Yeah,
insane. Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
insane. And then
And I think it's, Chris, it's just I think it's a nervous tick on us because we're so we got all this military training behind us, right? So it's just like to give a little context here. It's like we look at this and we're like, whoa, man, this is not anybody with any kind of military training, any kind of, hiking, training or any kind of advanced land navigation would be found in ever, right? So
yeah. Oh yeah.
literally the term "you won't catch me dead in it" like would be the statement here, right? It's like, yeah,
For real.
they did, and how did they do that? Like how did we get to this conclusion where they're wearing bare minimum, clothing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. By the way, this tequila is pretty good, man. I got to be honest with you. There's just a
Yeah.
little hint of a spice. Yeah, it's great. But yeah, so let's look. I'm just gonna. Well, we'll just quickly go
Yeah.
through some of the. So okay, so yeah, he's got burned hair. He's got burns on his hands. He's all scratched up, right? Abrasions, blah blah blah. Hemorrhage, swelling. He's got some
Yeah.
gray foam coming out of his mouth when they find him. Not sure what that is. Again, I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how common that is for patients that had traumatic deaths and whatnot. But it's just I don't know. Cat is a little strange. Gray is that like brain matter maybe or I don't know. I don't know. The other Yuri, again, burns on his hands. Right. He's got bites on his skin, swelling around the eyes, internal hemorrhaging. Right, some abrasions and swelling and all that stuff, right? So I guess nothing super crazy here. Again, wasn't found in many clothes, so super weird. Igor Dyatlov, right, the 23-year-old leader of Trek here, he was found a little further away from the creek, right, closer to the camp. He had some pretty I guess regular injuries for the type of death that he probably had, right? So nothing super crazy here. Oh, dry crust. That just sounds gross. He had dry crust on his hands. Zinnieta, this is one of the ones that was found near the creek. And so this caught my eye. The back of the nose is slightly concave.
Yeah.
That was a note that they made in the autopsy.
What caused that? Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know what that means. The back of the nose? What is that?
Yeah.
Like, does that mean like inside your face?
Inside completely broke in. Yeah, I mean, that's what it sounds like. Yeah. Completely interesting. Yeah, and then again, links to the autopsy report to go more detail, but completely interesting. Yeah.
Yep. Rustem Slobodin are suspected or maybe possible KGB. We don't know. We really don't know. Again, just theories. I don't want to speak bad about anybody. But the guy that joined a little bit late, right? And you can see he actually he was a lot more prepared, right? So he had what looks like a watch, a couple pens, some money. He had his an envelope and a pen and some. He actually had like 50 matches on him, which is interesting, right? 310 rubles. I forgot. Did they still use rubles over there?
No, I don't think so. Yeah,
no?
Good question.
I feel like they use rubles.
Maybe it is. I don't know.
Russian dollars. Anyways, he's got some internal hemorrhaging. He's got a skull fracture, a couple of other things. Lyudmila. So this is one of the interesting ones. Missing soft tissues in the area of the superciliary arches, right? So somebody took her eyebrows, or she lost her eyebrows. That's strange.
Dude, insane. Oh, by the way, I did look it up. It is still, I think, the Russian ruble, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
That's a ruble still.
Yeah, it's still, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you know
Yeah.
what? Inflation, 310
Yeah.
rubles, you'd be a
Yeah.
rich man today.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, probably. Probably.
Or a woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then, yeah, oh, this is the other one, right? Multiple fracture of ribs with multiple hemorrhages, right?
Yeah. You were
She's
telling me
one of the
this.
ones.
Yeah.
She's one of the ones that had significant blunt force trauma to like the midsection or the chest region, and they think that's how she died. Right, so it's very strange. Alexander Kolovatov. Man, wow, I'm really getting my Russian practice in today.
Yeah.
Again, it is pretty consistent with what they were going through. Nikolai, again, pretty consistent with what they were going through. Just a couple of bruises here and there. He died of hypothermia, right? Semyon, again, he had. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. He definitely had some injuries that were consistent with hypothermia and what they were going through, clawing around in the snow, and probably in the dark. That's the other thing, man. It was probably pitch black when this all was happening. Honestly, that's scary. But this guy, Semyon Zolotaryov, he had missing eyeballs and missing eyebrows.
Yeah.
So he's the second guy that had missing eyebrows. Just weird. But yeah, so that's some of the injuries. You guys can go and check out this website. It's actually really, really cool. Because it'll tell you the pre-mortem injuries, so before they died and then after they died, right? I guess some stuff happened to them after they died too.
Yeah. Yeah, which
really weird.
Again, they still try to attribute to animals. They still try to attribute, but still, again, you can make your own theories, right? Continues to be rather unsolved. There's definitely some other theories, which I mean, one of the initial ones, from Soviet investigations was they concluded that the group died from a compelling natural force, right? But we talked about this, right? Like everything at that time was like classified, right? So they immediately classified the case, so that raised eyebrows immediately then, as it does now, because it's like, okay, why aren't we talking about it? But then the other one is, as you kind of alluded to, was modern day scientists. And in fact, I think we talked about the Smithsonian. They cover it really good, and we'll drop that in our show notes. But they talk about author, I think it's like Johan Guam's theory or something. He's like the head of snow and avalanche simulation laboratory or something. I know I'm gonna.
That's a hell of a job.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, okay, this guy goes out there and does a whole bunch of testing in the lab, and validates things. Well, I what's crazy though is like his theory on how they died, and again, great link, great article that explains the hillside and how an avalanche, a natural natural force, natural disaster that even Soviet Union concluded with back in the day, could have been validated. In fact, Russian authorities recently also agreed with that study, right, where hey, maybe it was an avalanche that completely just covered them up, and then they immediately had to like evacuate and like basically get rid of do whatever it takes, right? Like hey, cutting through their tent from the inside to escape, get out. But unfortunately, right, due to the elements, due to the weather, being able to get back into their gear, I think they reach hypothermia like immediately, right? And along with some of the other things that you talked about, right? So yeah.
Well, there's a couple theories. So I don't know how many of them you read through. There was one theory called, it was the katabatic winds, and I think that kind of like coalesces with this other theory. It's infrasound, right?
Yeah.
So a katabatic wind is, and by the way, I studied meteorology. Just want to point that out, not just for this, but a katabatic wind is something that happens. Typically, it's in a mountainous environment, but it's when really dense winds go up and over a mountain, and then when it comes down the mountainside, it creates like hurricane, like gale force winds, right?
Yeah.
So they call it katabatic winds, and they think that the Dyatlov Pass was sort of an area where it might have been possible. So super, super high winds, right? One of the theories was that somebody that was in the tent originally, right, at the camp on the slope, they walked outside for one reason or another. I don't know, had to go to the bathroom, had to call their mom, whatever. walked out, right?
1959. Yeah. Yeah.
Went a little bit too far away, and then got swept up by the winds because I mean they're strong enough to like take a person off
Yeah.
their feet sometimes. Got swept up by the winds, and then the other 8 folks, they basically tried to do their best search and rescue effort.
Mm.
Not a great theory. Like one of the reasons why they don't think that really happened was because number one, the experience of everybody that was
Yeah.
there, right? Again, coming back, experience of everyone that was there, they wouldn't have left the tent. First of all, they wouldn't have cut the tent open.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have left the tent without full full snow gear and everything, and they would have had, I think, a very they would have had like a SOP, right? A standard operating procedure for how to do search and rescue operations. So that's one of the things that they don't think that happened there. But that also kind of goes into the infrasound, right?
Yeah.
And apparently, right? I didn't do a lot of reading on this, right? So this is a lot of speculation. But infrasound is if high winds go through, like a certain acoustic thing, right? Which may have been like helped out by the shape of the mountains and the path and everything. It can make this like particular sound that can turn people crazy, right?
Yeah.
Again, this theory has
or just cause them in a panic, I think is what you said too, right? Yeah. Yeah. Be very disruptive. Yeah.
The thing is, this theory has very like infrasound is very little scientific backing to it. It's just kind of like it's a thing. Yeah, it's definitely a thing. Like, oh, my brother did infrasound. Yeah. So like very little scientific backing, but it was a theory. Not probably the leading theory. But so those are 2. I don't know if you read about any more.
Well, I can tell you, man. If you're asking me if certain sounds will make you shit your pants, I'll tell you that's a guaranteed. And why I say that is my infrasound equivalent would have been unbeknownst to me, there was a local factory that to release air that gets stored in over time. At this factory, they do a one-time, once a month release. I didn't know. We had just moved into the area. I'm here at the bus stop, and that thing goes off early in the morning, super loud, and I bull it back straight, gun it right back to the house. So if that's anything,
what? It was a factory?
It was a factory. They have to. It's a gas that has to escape, but they store it. I don't know why, but they release it once a month. And I don't know, maybe they've modernized it since then, but yeah, it was pretty loud. Like I'm talking about, train whistle like times 100, and that made me panic. Yeah, so I would tell you, man, I've definitely been hiking in some really, some really, crazy environments. Definitely been, camped out on some steep slopes. Probably not in the weather conditions that they were experiencing that night, but with eerie sounds, you definitely start questioning the elements and what's out there. Again, if a kid at that age, and then all the way to someone pretty experienced in different type of environments, if you're telling me something could make you freak out, when in those type of conditions, I would tell you, yeah, I think it would be rather easy. But
well, there's also I just very briefly skimmed over, but there was like some UFO theories too. I think there were some sightings, right?
Yeah, the orb lights, right? They talked about that. Yeah, so like from even the last frame on the camera was like had this weird strange light to all the way to the people talking about, I don't know if it was pre or post camper or like hikers and campers that were talking about all the orb lights. So that's another conspiracy theory, is like, oh man, maybe they got in too close. I don't know, UFO or something, some kind of unnatural phenomenon really tied into them. But I don't know. Again, you look at the autopsies, you look at the way they were scattered across the area. It's a lot of different theories, and I think that's really where our listeners, right? I think it's their turn, right? Like, what do they think? Or what do you think happened to Igor, Dyatlov and his team, right?
Dyatlov. Say it with a Russian accent.
Dyatlov and his team. Yeah. What is that? Was it a natural disaster? I don't know. Well, because that's what I told you. Modern scientists, and Russian authorities, like, really think Igor Dyatlov and his team died from natural disaster, Was it a military cover-up, or was it something out of this world, like, those pictures talking about? But I don't know. I think people could drop their theories in the comments, or maybe DM us on Instagram and let us know. And again, Chris, I think, they shouldn't forget all the resources we mentioned today. We're going to drop in the show notes, or even on our website on unsolvedandunseen.com. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we move on, really quickly, I just want to say, so that initial investigation ended with a compelling natural cause, which could mean anything. Anything in the entire universe is a natural thing, right?
Yeah.
But they reopened this case very recently, actually, and they closed it with a consensus or some findings, right?
Yeah.
In I think it was July of 2020. And the lead investigator basically said that the reason behind the demise of this hiking group was a slab avalanche.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people agree with it. A lot of people don't agree with it, because some people don't think that the area that they camped out at was it didn't have all the ingredients for a slab avalanche. Which, by the way, a slab avalanche, if you guys don't know, is just your regular avalanche. Like, that's the official term for like your regular avalanche. I think there's one or two other, but 90% of avalanches that kill people are slab avalanches. It's where a lot of snow gets displaced and set in one spot by high wind, and then when the wind kind of dies off, then it comes down. But typically you can hear an avalanche before it actually hits you.
Yeah.
So they think that's one of the reasons why they cut the tent open and they started running wild without the gear that they needed, because they heard this. They heard this avalanche coming, and they're like, "Oh shit!
Oh,
we got about 30 seconds to live, right? Remember?
Yeah.
We got about 30 seconds to live."
Crazy.
And so they went out and unfortunately some died of hypothermia and whatnot. And then some of the other investigators say that the missing tongue, the missing eyes, some of the other abrasions that happen post-mortem are very consistent with scavenger animals.
Of course.
And so that is the ultimate conclusion that was arrived at in 2020. Some people still don't like it because of hey, avalanche in this area, and I don't know, blah blah blah. Not super sure, but again, please drop your opinions in some of the comments. Let us know, DM us, whatever you got to do, and let us know.
Awesome. Yep. Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in to Unsolved and Unseen. If you're enjoying the show, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and as always, stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome,
Chris. So, all right, this is now we're moving on to a new segment. This is the segment where we welcome the part of the show where things get even more intense and honestly like a little unhinged, right? This is kind of Tales Over Tequila, where Chris and I pour ourselves a drink. We dive into a kind of story that makes you say, wait, what? And the tequila isn't just for show. It's because the topic is so wild, so unbelievable. You kind of need a drink to process it. And yes, Chris is hearing this story for the first time. So you're getting his raw, unfiltered reaction, just like you at home. So yeah, tell me, Chris, you excited to hear what I got for you today?
So excited. Let me pour myself another drink.
Do it.
I don't know if we're plugging whatever tequila we're drinking, but this is called 100% agave ghost, right? So I just saw this.
Yeah.
There we go. That's what the label looks like. Little
Nice.
skeleton hand gripping a ghost pepper. So it's tequila. I guess it's been infused with some ghost peppers. I've been drinking it already, Octavio, as you might know.
Yeah.
I think it's delicious. I love it.
That's awesome. Man.
My face it gets more red. You'll be able to tell how much I've had by how red my face is.
Yeah. Interesting. We talk about this, like the skeleton thing, man. I guess that's the theme. I too got some skeleton thing. I don't know. It's the guy told me what I wrote it down at Dura Silver, because I've never really tried this type of tequila. But what's interesting is it's pretty smooth. I was also drinking it a little bit before, but I'm interested to taste the other bottles that he also sold me, because my concern is maybe this is the only bottle he told me to start with this one first, and I got it at some port on a cruise, and it's like
kind of thing.
Yeah, so maybe this is the only tequila. The rest are all filled with water and artificial coloring, dude. We'll find out.
Savor that one. Oh, this is pretty good. I like it because as much as I like spiced liquors, like infused with spices and stuff.
Yeah.
I love it. My mouth loves it. My brain loves it. My stomach
Hates it.
hates it.
Yeah.
It hates it, man.
Yeah.
So there was one time I was it was a Russian. We just got through with our little Russian story there, the Dyatlov Pass, but went to a Russian and Uzbek restaurant where I live in DC.
Yeah.
And they have this whole shelf full of, it's like not top tier vodka. It's kind of like whatever, food grade vodka, we'll call it. Not medical grade, but they have they have a bunch of like dill and cucumber, blueberry. It's like infused vodkas, right? And they do it right there in the store. And they have one that's habanero vodka. I was like, damn, I gotta try that. I did, and again, man, that's you know what? I tried it twice. The first time I tried it, it was pretty good. I don't know, maybe I had like some stomach lining left that it just completely annihilated. The second time I tried it, oh man, I tell you what. First, the mouth burn is. I mean, that's the good part, honestly. If you're you're eating spicy food, like that's the good part. It's really good. And then the next 45 minutes felt like the habanero peppers grew arms and legs and were trying to claw its way out of my stomach. I tried to go to the bathroom. I couldn't do anything, man. I had to keel over, literally at the bar. I had to keel over. The bartender brought me a glass of milk, man. He was like, "Hey, I can see you probably need this." And so, Anyways, this stuff is not that spicy, even though it is ghost pepper. I think they kind of try to dial it back for the common folk, the white folk like me.
I think we talked about it, right? It was an easy decision to do this segment of Tales Over Tequila because the reality is like, you never had a bad experience with tequila. I don't get me wrong. I think we all have had those crazy stories that maybe we probably can't cover on this channel, right? But the reality is like, you don't have those bad side effects, right? I don't know why, man. Beer next day, like feel like crap. Maybe it's just me, but it's how your body, maybe adjusts or I don't know, like can take certain alcohol, but beer can't do. Wine gives me like actual headaches, and I very rarely get headaches. And then you got, hard whiskey, or other types of liquor. Same thing, just kind of really upsets my stomach no matter, whether I'm complimenting or not. But it's like tequila, always smooth, never have issues, drink a lot, and wake up the next day and feeling fine and ready to go,
Tequila's never let me down.
Exactly. I think probably
maybe we should do an episode on that for the alcoholics among our listener base. And hey, which is the healthiest one you can drink?
All right, so let's get into it, right? The year is 1999, right? Joan Murray, and in fact, let me pull this up. She's a 47-year-old seasoned skydiver. She's doing what she loves the most, right? Jumping out of planes. And she's on a routine skydive when something goes terribly wrong, dude. Her main parachute fails to open, dude. Main parachute at 14,000 feet. Yeah, exactly, dude. I mean, Chris, I figured me and you, like, right, let's talk about it, right? We're both paratroopers.
Out of everyone.
I know.
You got to show me a parachute failing to open.
So I figured this was perfect to talk over tequila, man. Like, her main shoot, dude, like, I mean, like, she has a backup, right? And immediately people think in there, but, she does. But here's the kicker. She deployed her reserve parachute and it only partially opened, man, causing her to plummet to the ground, dude, at a horrifying speed of 80 miles per hour. Again, man, nervous tick here. I don't mean to laugh at the situation, but I'm more laughing at the fact that, like, me and you are experienced jumpers. We also were paratroopers in the Army. And the reality is, like, at 10,000 feet, we know we go through that pre-jump, you go through all the 5 steps, you're just, really going through making sure that you're good to go. And what do we do, right? We say it multitude of times. When in doubt, pull your reserve, right? Without a doubt, right? And we're at 10,000 feet. So yes, we have less time to react, but I don't know if that's a good thing, right? Her being at 14,000 feet, I think it's like, if you got a malfunction, that just gives you more time to understand you're in a shitty situation or a crappy situation. It's probably,
well, you got the rest of your life to fix it, man.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you find out, man? She is going 80 miles an hour. So in fact, this is something that I thought was like completely intriguing, right? So she was left about 700 feet off the ground when, there's, they reportedly say like, hey, there's a 50% chance of survival if you fall within, or are falling from 48 feet, which reduces to zero up, but
Above
zero
80
if
feet,
above 80 feet. Yeah.
you
So
have a 0% chance of
exactly,
survival, and she
exactly.
fell from 14,000
Yeah.
feet.
And this is the crazy thing, right? So she defies the odds, right? And survived. But you exactly how it says here, but you're gonna wonder how, dude. Dude, so check this on. Like, hold on to this, man. She lands on a pile of fire ants, man. Dude, insane, man.
Oh
So
man.
I don't know about you, but I've been on Holland DZ, Fort Liberty. Got like, I remember hitting one of my jumps, one of many of my jumps. I remember hitting that drop zone so hard, and I'm thinking like, oh, dude, this is it, right? And ironically, this is not where I break my back in two places and find out, you know, literally like 3 days later. This was actually a time where I hit the ground so hard and I just laid there and I just remember like what is keeping me like alive at this point in time because all this adrenaline's rushing and I look down and like my brain's not reacting fast enough or something. I don't know. Maybe the pain neurons are kicking in, but I literally like there was I had basically one of those stakes for the antennas actually like went through the side of my leg, man. So that's nowhere close
Oh,
to what she's feeling because again, she just dropped, plummeted, from
80
14,000
miles an
feet.
hour.
Yeah, dude,
80 miles
that's
an hour.
exact. I'm telling you right there. Like just immediately, it's going to be a couple drinks as we go along, man.
I don't
So
even go 80 on the highway, dude. I'm too scared. I mean, it's not the
yeah,
speed that's gonna kill you,
yeah, yeah. No, of
it's
course,
just
right?
sudden stopping.
So that's what's crazy, right? So she's survives and falls and gets attacked by all these fire ants, right? So that day turned apocalyptic, right? So but again that twist, because people are like, dude, what's going on with these mound of fire ants, right? So here's where like the kicker really kicks in, right? So the shock of the bites actually kept her adrenaline pumping, kind of like I was telling you about
It
my
kept
story
her
earlier. Like,
alive.
yeah, so
Damn.
so it prevent her body from like going into full shock and shutting down. So as you're reading through the article, it'll talk about how there's like, really, it runs internal bleeding, the works, but against all the odds, dude, she completely survived. And it's crazy because I'm a Carolinian from South Carolina, also, claim Texas because I've lived, a lot of my life in Texas. And she goes to South Carolina, and that's not how I want her to enjoy the South Carolina skies. But man, were the airborne gods with her that day? Because, dude,
So she went to
yeah,
South Carolina just to
just to jump,
skydive?
just to do the skydive.
Oh
Yeah. So
man.
yeah,
I don't
so
know if
she
I would
fall,
tell her to go play the lottery or never leave the house again.
dude,
She's super
insane,
lucky, but
insane.
also very, very unlucky. That's
Yeah.
insane. Let's see
No,
what her injuries. Dude.
yeah.
Several
Yeah,
shattered bones.
dude, broken bones, internal
Shattered.
bleeding, the works, man. You name it. Like, I mean, dude, 17 blood transfusions, 20 reconstructive surgery. Like, and again, to hear this out, man, Murray recovered and 2 years after execution, bravely took to the skies again. Dude,
Oh man.
that is a paratrooper,
Asking
man.
for
Somebody,
it.
somebody like glass off, man.
Yeah,
Like,
honestly.
just that is awesome, man. And so I gotta tell you, we talked about this um it's like some kind of like cosmic joke with a happy ending, but seriously, think about the odds that we talked about from the beginning, man. All this, her parachute failing, hitting the ground in just the right way to survive, and then the ants playing this like bizarre life-saving role. I'm telling you, man, it's kind of crazy to believe, especially like with all she went through. Now sadly, there is like a little tail at the end, but not towards the skydiving incident, and like the miracle
Oh,
there and the fact that she went at
Octavio.
it.
She
I know.
died.
I know, man.
I
But
thought this
this
was
was
gonna be a happy ending.
yeah, but not about the injuries. I would tell you this will be a happy ending at the end, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why,
Okay.
right? Because
I
not
trust
only did
you.
she survive, yeah, like you got to think, man, like she's definitely a hero in my opinion, and like really a role model because she did this skydiving, she survived, she went back at it, and like to me, that's just like, bro, 100% true paratrooper type mentality, man. Just right? People always mission, or mission first, people always kind of thing. And it's like, dude, she
Yeah.
was all about that mission and enjoying life to the fullest. But sadly, yes, she did pass away. Because she, as you read here, she was battling cancer for the past 29 months, and as a family member says, or obituary reads, she was finally free of her pain. But I'll tell you, man, miracle story, something to share, something for people to always tune in and just be like, dude, if like Joanne can survive from 14,000 feet, and get back at it and just say, you know what, I'm skydiving back in 2 years, like hats off to her, man. Like that is living life to the fullest, in my opinion, man. So
Oh yeah, big props to
yeah,
her. I don't know that I would
yeah,
if I fell 14,000 feet and shattered bones and got bitten
yeah.
up by a bunch of. I don't know that I would be like, let's try it
Dude,
again. Come
man,
on,
I'm
everyone.
telling you, Joanne and those fire ants, dude, they're owed a toast, man. So
Who the heck did they had to do an event?
yeah.
Who packed her chute? Who was? I mean,
I don't know. Yeah, we don't know the rigor. I think it might have been her, man. I mean, who knows? Like, the reality is like, who knows? But
good lord, that's a
bravo,
one in a
yeah.
million. No,
No,
I
I'm
mean,
I'm telling you, man. So that's why, man. I think it's cheers to that, and to all you listening. Kind of remember, man. Like life's kind of full of stories you can't really explain. How things happen, but the reality is like things like this, Chris. I think we'll continue to bring more, these type of stories next time. And yeah, but for
yeah.
now, let's
Here's to
take a sip.
Joanne Murray.
Yeah, let's take a sip to
Joanne.
Joanne Murray, man. Yeah, and check your parachutes and your ant mounds out there on the drop zone, man. So,
Oh yeah, don't forget those
all
JMP
right.
bags.
Yeah,
You're a
man.
jump master, right?
Yeah, man.
That's what's up. Me
Awesome.
too.
Yeah,
Yep.
man. All right. That concludes Tales of Tequila, man. What'd you think?
That
Crazy.
was that was good.
I don't know what that was about.
The fucking fire ants were that was its like, man.
That was crazy.
Wild.
Yeah.
Cool.